everyone, Grievous from 2003 here, but you can call me Ronnie, here with another Imperial Assault video. This time we're going to take a look at the Rebel heroes in the core set. These are the ones that I recommend the Rebel players make their selection from the first time that you play the game, in campaign mode of course. So we're going to look at these first six in some detail. For the Rebels, this will give you an idea of what you like to play. For the Imperial, this will give you an idea of what you're likely to face. Generally, I believe in both sides having as much detail as possible, unless it breaks the balance or the game rules somehow. So, yeah, we'll just take these six in order in Vassal here. First, we'll start with Fenn Signis. At first glance, he's your no-frills Rebel Commando. Looking at his card, you can see he's got a black defense die, good health. He's perfectly balanced across all attribute tests here. Now remember, the fist is strength, the eyeball is perception, and the wrench is, engineering, slicing, hacking, whatever you want to call it, really. Those are actually perfectly average dice rolls in my experience for those three. Next, he's got Havoc Shot. You spend a strain while shooting, and if it does at least 1 damage, then the attack will have Blast and deal 1 damage to every figure adjacent to the main target. Next, he's got Lone Wolf. If at the end of his activation there are no friendly figures next to him, he recovers a strain. So already from the beginning, he's got above average strain economy. Looking up at his first weapon, it's the infantry rifle. This is parallel to the stormtrooper's rifle. It's well balanced. It's got 1 upgrade slot. I generally do recommend upgrading to something better as soon as possible. But if you've got a decent attachment, then you can wait on it for a while. Next, going into skill cards. These are, of course, the skill cards that you can get with XP during Rebel upgrade steps. On average, you'll have enough XP to purchase a 1 XP card, a 2 XP card, a 3 XP card, and a 4 XP card before the final mission. What order you do that in is up to you, and you might get slightly more depending on if the Rebels win some missions. So first we got tactical movement. You decide at the start of your activation to give yourself or a friendly figure within 3 spaces 2 movement points. If it's an ally, they move those 2 immediately. If it's you, you can wait until later in your turn to move those if you want to. Next we have take cover. You spend a strain while you're getting attacked, and you add a white die to your defense pool. Obviously, that lets you roll more blocks or more surge cancels, or even a total evade if you're lucky. Do keep in mind that exhaust means whenever your turn comes around, exhausted cards will come back the next time it's your turn. Adrenaline Rush. You get attacked. If you suffered 1 or more damage, you test strength, which is a pretty good shot. You just need to roll 1 surge on a blue and a green die. If you pass, you recover 3 strain, which, obviously that's really good. You need that to use your Havoc Shot ability and a bunch of these other XP cards. Next, Weapon Expert. You spend 1 strain, and your attack gains Pierce 1, and it applies +2 accuracy to the attack results, you're basically guaranteed a hit at that point. And of course, Pierce cuts through one block on the opponent's defense die. Next, you got Trench Fighter. If you're targeting a figure within 3 spaces, you can exhaust this to apply +2 damage to the attack results. Now, this can be absolutely huge and pretty much guarantees that some damage goes through, which is especially good if you need to deal at least 1 damage to do a status effect or other effect like blast. And you know, if you're within 3 spaces, it's pretty much guaranteed to hit. In fact, that's the minimum accuracy on his infantry rifle. It's a blue and a green die. Next is a really interesting one, Suppressive Fire. After you resolve Havoc Shot, you can spend 1 strain. Each figure that suffered 1 or more damage from that attack, that includes blasts, chooses to either suffer 1 more damage or become stunned. However, if they were already stunned, they must choose to suffer 1 damage instead. This provides an interesting choice to the Imperial. Are they going to risk an extra 1 damage? Or, you know, are they going to stun, which means the Imperials won't be able to chase you if you run away from them or past them, or whatever you're going to do. Next is Rebel Elite. This one's actually pretty passive. It automatically gives you +3 health to your max and +1 endurance to your hero. Again, absolutely huge. +3 health gives you more health than Gaarkhan has. And after this, when you use Havoc Shot, it applies Blast 2. So that becomes an AoE of 2 rather than an AoE of 1, which, you know, doubles it. Next, and well, finally, for the XP cards, you've got Superior Positioning. This one, you have to spend an action and a strain. However, you can then move a number of spaces up to your speed, and you become focused. So it's basically just doing a move, except you don't generate move points, so you can't split it up. But it does give you a focused. And while you've got that focused, you apply +1 block to all your defense results. So that's really, really good for moving Fenn forward and tanking him up. Finally, his mission is Brush Fire. If he succeeds, he gets Veteran Prowess, which adds a +1 damage modifier to Havoc Shot, and once per activation, essentially, he gets to recover an extra 2 health on a rest. Which honestly, that's one of the best personal reward cards you can get from these personal missions. As you can see, Fenn seems pretty basic. You know, just a veteran trooper guy. But looking deeper into him, he's got the best strain economy of any rebel hero that I've seen in action. And he just gets better, either in terms of damage output or in terms of survivability and utility. Or obviously you can mix and match these XP cards as you go. Alright, so moving on to Jin. We'll take care of this stuff in the same order. She's got below average health, but she uses a white die, so she might get some total evades. Strength is crap, got average perception. Her engineering is really, really good because she's got that yellow die, and most facings on the yellow die will have a surge that let you win an attribute test. Her main shtick is quick draw here. Whenever a figure in her line of sight is about to activate, she can spend 2 strain and do a free attack on that target. Free as in it's not going to cost an action on her turn, but it will of course cost 2 strain. If used carefully and if you're a bit lucky, this will kill the target you shoot at, preventing them from activating at all on their turn. And if you kill a weak group of one, like an Imperial officer, for example, that still counts as the Imperial activation, although they didn't get to do anything. So that almost just makes them skip their turn, which can be pretty powerful. Opportunist. Whenever she resolves an attack and the target suffered 1 or more damage, she gets to move a free space. That, coupled with her speed of 5, makes her possibly the most mobile rebel starting out. Okay, looking at her starting weapon here, she's got a Vintage Blaster. Has the same surges as Fenn's infantry rifle, but it rolls 2 green dice. Now, green dice compared to blue dice it's going to be a bit less accurate, but it does a bit more damage. Jin, I wouldn't fire her gun from too far away from the target. There have been a lot of situations where 2 ones came up and it just missed. Going into the XP cards. 1 XP, quick as a whip. After an attack targeting her is resolved, she gets to move 1 space. So that makes her extra movable. Smuggler's Luck is a particularly interesting utility card. It's got 3 things it does. First, you're able to re-roll any number of dice on an attribute test, which virtually guarantees a success on her perception and engineering. Next, you can exhaust this card after you draw a supply card to discard it and draw a new one. That can be really good if you didn't get something you can use the first time. Lastly, she lets you draw an additional item card during the Rebel upgrade stage. So going with the core rules, that'd be 7 instead of 6. Which, you know, that 7th item might be something really good you might like that you would have missed. Going into roll with it, you can spend a surge when an attack targeting you is declared. It adds a block to your defense results, and you're also allowed to convert any blocks you might have rolled into surge cancels. This is important because oftentimes the more powerful enemies will have surge abilities that turn a surge into +2 damage. So especially later on, a surge cancel is better than a block. Then you got Cheap Shot. This one directly buffs your quick draw to do an additional 1 damage, and it adds a stun ability, surge ability to the attack. I know that one tends to get used and abused. Next you have Gunslinger. This one's a little bit weird. Basically, if you are carrying 2 pistols and you fire with one, you can use surge abilities on the other one. This could be particularly useful if the gun you're firing has a yellow die, so you get more surges to use. You can also spend a strain while attacking to apply a surge to your attack results, so that card kind of combos off itself. The trick being you have to buy a decent pistol for her to use in her offhand, essentially. And that does fill up that slot, so she couldn't carry a melee weapon or even a heavier rifle as well. Each of these characters only has 2 weapon slots. Get Cocky. Assuming you resolved an attack, this can be any attack, including quick draw. The target was defeated, you recover to strain, endurance. They're interchangeable. Or become focused. Now basically you can use this to get free quick draws or focused. Of course it is an exhaust, so you only get this back when it's your turn again. So you're going to want to pay careful attention to that. Next we have Trick Shot. Spend a strain when you declare an attack with a pistol. You can draw line of sight from any space within 3 spaces. Mechanically, this means you can shoot around corners, and that's really, really good for making sure that you can shoot without being shot, or, well, it lets you shoot from closer to the target, so there's much less chance you'll miss. Finally, you have Sidewinder, where after you resolve an attack, you may move up to 2 spaces. Uh, Assuming the attack deals at least 1 damage, this will stack with Opportunist. So if you shoot a guy and deal 1 damage, you can immediately move 3 spaces for free. And let's say you use both your actions to do attacks. Neither of these abilities is an exhaust. So you can actually take 2 shots and move 6 spaces, or a minimum of 4 if none of those attacks do any damage, which they usually do. Next, she's got High Moon. This is a Wild West gun battle on a moon against a Trandoshan. It's pretty fun, but kinda rebel-sided if the Imperial's not careful. But if Jin succeeds in the mission, she gets Peacemaker. Spend 1 strain, exhaust this card after a hostile figure resolves an attack targeting you, and then you get to interrupt to perform an attack targeting that figure. So it's kind of like an extra quick draw. You can use it once before your next turn comes around, and it only costs 1 strain. Uh, Keep in mind that it says after a hostile figure resolves an attack, so this will be after you take the damage. So yeah, Jin's a little bit of a glass cannon. If you're careful with her, you can do quite a lot. She's got a lot of abilities that make her better at moving, give her some utility, and particularly buff her pistols and quick draw abilities. I find she's generally pretty simple to use. Again, if you're careful, but also if you remember her quick draw. It can be tricky, especially if you're one player controlling 2 to 4 rebels, to remember everything. With Jin, it's definitely a matter of practice. Moving over to Gaarkhan. Big, angry Wookiee man. You can see he's got 14 health to start, and he's got a defense of 1 black die. Absolutely phenomenal strength roll. He's got that yellow die. Not very perceptive. Average at engineering. His abilities. He's got the spend an action and 2 surge to move up to your speed toward an enemy and then perform an attack. This is essentially a move and attack action all in one, with the exception that you don't get movement points to split. Next, he's got his rage ability. If he suffers 3 or more damage in one attack, he'll get really angry, and he'll get a free focused, which once again is that extra green die to use on attacks or attribute rolls. His starting weapon will be the Vibro Axe. Red and yellow die can be absolutely brutal, though you'll note that he doesn't actually have any surge abilities that deal extra direct damage. He does have a Pierce 1, and he's got a Cleave 1, where he can deal 1 damage to an enemy adjacent to him. It's kind of like Blast, but only 1 target. Moving into his XP cards, Wookiee Loyalty. You can exhaust this card while you or an adjacent friendly figure is defending to apply +1 to the defense results. So that's like a free extra block once per turn. Wookiee Fortitude. Spend a strain, exhaust this card to recover 2 damage, or discard one of your conditions. Having this ability makes him pretty much immune to being stunned or bled, yeah, having the bleed condition that is. But it's also basically free extra healing, though obviously you will want to watch his endurance. Staggering blow, spend a strain. If the target suffered 3 or more damage, it becomes stunned. Ferocity, when you declare an attack while you're focused, the green die becomes a red die for the purposes of the attack. And it also adds an extra cleave. That can be really good if you give Gaarkhan a different weapon. He'll still get that cleave. Alternately, if you roll a lot of yellow surges on the Vibro Axe, you can use both cleaves and kind of split that cleave damage as you want. That can be somewhat rare though. On to the 3 XP cards. Rampage. After he does his move and attack for charge, each hostile figure adjacent to him suffers 1 additional damage. Absolutely great for dealing with groups such as stormtroopers, which tend to stick close together, and oftentimes they'll block your way to make you need extra movement points to get past them. Vicious Strike. Spend 1 strain. Use when you declare an attack with a melee weapon, and this just flat lets you apply +1 damage to the attack results. Good for if you need extra damage, great for if you're applying a status effect. Unstoppable. This applies an extra endurance and an extra speed to the hero. Now keep in mind that is an extra speed. It basically extends the reach of his charge by an additional 1. And it makes him be able to charge more often with that extra endurance. And if he's flipped to his wounded side, that actually applies +2 to his attack results. In addition, normally when he's wounded, his endurance and speed is 1 less. The buff from Unstoppable basically lets him retain his unwounded levels of endurance and speed while wounded. That's extra good for if you just don't want him to go down. Finally, we got a Brutal Cleave. Exhaust this card and spend a strain after you resolve an attack with a melee weapon. Perform an additional attack targeting a different figure or object adjacent to the target of the first attack. So, except for the 1 strain, this is essentially a free second melee attack, though it does have to target a different figure or object, and it has to be adjacent to the target of the first attack. But the thing about Imperial figures is that there are quite a lot of them, so odds are you will get adjacent enemies quite often. His personal mission is Indebted. You have to run in, free a bunch of Wookiees, or rather just the 1 Wookiee. And if you succeed, you get Life Debt. You can exhaust the card after an attack targeting another friendly figure within 3 spaces. And then if that figure suffers 3 or more damage, you become focused. So this essentially extends rage to allies essentially within 3 spaces. It can be pretty good, not necessarily as good as some of the other rewards, but it's a fun mission. I don't find it especially hard for the Imperials. For the Imperials to lose, I mean, the rebels have a bit of an edge in that one. Next, we're going on to Gideon, the Valiant Commander. Gideon is the first advanced character we're going to be looking at here. In principle, he works similarly to the Imperial officer, who, remember, can order his allies around to have them do extra things at the expense of his actions. But just looking at the stats, you can see that attribute-wise, he's actually average in strength and engineering, but above average in perception. So he's very good just from an attribute standpoint. He's got low health, but he does have the black defense die, as well as good endurance. As you can see, his main shtick is spend an action and 2 strain, choose another friendly figure within 3 spaces. That figure may interrupt to perform either a move or an attack action. For himself, he's also got disabling shot. He automatically gives any pistol that he's wielding the ability to stun with a surge. And that's great, because as you can see up here, his holdout blaster is great with piercing through defenses, and it's got the yellow die to bounce off of his disabling shot ability. Uh, the only thing is, it's going to have somewhat low range. There's barely any range on the yellow die, and it's just got 1 blue die, so that's more of a close range last ditch weapon. His XP cards expand upon what he can already do. Called shot, you can exhaust this while your friendly figure's attacking. If the target's in your line of sight, you apply +1 surge to the attack results. Military efficiency, this one has dual purpose. First, you can exhaust this card while attacking to convert a damage to a surge. And second, you can exhaust this card while defending to convert a block into a surge cancel, keeping in mind that you can only do one or the other before your next turn because of that exhaust effect. Mobile Tactician. After you resolve command, gain 2 movement points. This essentially lets him move at half speed and do his commands. Heir of Command applies +2 health to him, bringing him up to where Fenn starts in terms of health. And whenever he uses command, he can choose any friendly figure in his line of sight. That gets rid of the range of command. Moving into the 3 XP, he's got Rallying Shout. You exhaust this card during your activation to choose another hero in your line of sight, and that hero recovers 2 strain. So yeah, any hero in his line of sight essentially recovers 2 of their endurance for free. And then we have for the cause, spend 1 strain, exhaust this card. When another friendly figure within 3 spaces declares an attack, that figure then becomes focused. So an extra green die on the attack, or a red one if Gaarkhan's got that XP card and you choose him. Hammer and Anvil. This one's a bit complicated. You spend an action and 2 surge. 2 strain, but you choose another friendly figure. You and that figure may each perform an attack targeting the same figure, so you get 2 attacks. The target figure chooses the order in which the attacks will be suffered. And during the second attack, remove all dice from the target's defense pool. So that's great. You get a regular attack, and then you get a second attack wherein they don't even get to roll any defense dice, so they'll be wide open for that one. Absolutely devastating. Finally, Master Stroke. Exhaust this card after you resolve command. You can perform an additional command without using an action or suffering the strain cost. So yeah, that's an extra free command once before your next turn. And you know that can be used and abused. You can have Gaarkhan do 2 attacks at just the cost of one of your actions, and 2 strain. So that one, honestly, Rebels could run away with that one. You've got the Friends of Old mission. Haven't played that one. But it does give you the Fearless Leader reward card for Gideon. When you deploy a Rebel Trooper, reduce the deployment cost by 2. Now that will actually be an entire Rebel Trooper squad. Normally they cost 6, but with this card they're gonna cost 4. Which, that'll be pretty great because then the Imperial only gets 4 threat off of it instead of 6. That does assume, of course, that you got the Rebel Trooper allies from a side mission. Um, which, that's reliant on you choosing the green mission when setting up the side mission deck that gives you the troopers, and then picking that side mission and winning it so you've got access to the troopers. But once you do, you can complete this mission, get this card, you get that bonus. Honestly, that's a lot of hoops to jump through, and it requires the stars aligning correctly. Fortunately, there is a second effect here. After you resolve a command, the chosen friendly figure recovers 1 strain. Absolutely great. Free strain recovery. If paired with Master Stroke, actually, that'll be a total of 2 strain recovered. So, even without Rebel Troopers, this card's pretty great. Moving back to a slightly more basic character, we've got Diala Passil, the Haunted Exile. In effect, she's a Jedi, a Padawan level Jedi, and you can move her into Knight with these upgrade cards, essentially. Starts with 12 HP and a white defense die. Good strength, excellent perception, poor engineering. She's got 2 great abilities here. First is Precise Strike. When you declare an attack with a melee weapon, you can take 2 strain and remove 1 die from the target's defense pool. Most Imperial figures are only going to have 1 defense die, so especially early game, this is really good for one-shotting stormtroopers. You've also got the Foresight defensive ability. You can use this once while defending against an attack. You spend 1 strain to re-roll a defense die. That defense die is usually going to be your white defense die, which, it effectively doubles your chances of rolling the total evade, which can be broken. I've actually been in games where the Imperial player has focused on Jin instead because Diala's got twice the chance to roll in total evade. Moving to her XP cards, we'll start with her starter weapon, the Plasteel Staff. It has reach, so it can be swung from 1 extra space away. It's got a green and yellow die, so the surge abilities will be coming up a lot. It's got the +1 damage, but perhaps more importantly, the stun. If you pair that with Precise Strike, you're highly likely to have a dead or at least stunned Imperial figure. So, she's pretty tactical from minute 1. Now moving into the purchasable stuff. Force Adept. Spend 1 strain, use while you or a friendly figure is performing an attack or attribute test, and then that figure may re-roll 1 die. It's important to note that even if your Diala's on the other side of the map, you can still let an ally re-roll a die from anywhere. So the power of friendship knows no bounds. Excuse me. It's also got this other ability. When Diala herself performs an engineering or strength test, you get to add a blue die to the dice pool. So that essentially just upgrades her engineering and her strength with a blue die. Absolutely huge utility. Then we've got Force Throw. This one's a more aggressive ability. Spend 2 strain to exhaust this card. You choose another small figure within 3 spaces. Small being the standard size. If it's got a bigger base than 1 square, then that's a large or larger figure. Anyway, test perception, which is almost a guarantee for Diala. If you pass, you can push that figure 3 spaces. Push actually can be a pull as well. Basically, just move them in any direction you want, 3 spaces. And then if that figure's hostile, it suffers a damage. Can be great for a free damage if you need to finish a guy off, or if you've got stormtroopers blocking your way and you want to move them out of the way. Next, battle meditation. When Diala rests during her activation, test perception, again, almost a guarantee. If you pass, choose yourself or a friendly figure. That can be a friendly figure anywhere on the board. That figure becomes focused. Defensive stance. When you use Foresight, again, that's the white die reroll, you apply an extra block to your defense results. So that makes Foresight count even if you do not roll that evasion. Also, after an attack an attack targeting you is resolved. If you suffered no damage, you become focused. So, yeah, free focused if you dodge the attack. Next, we got Snap Kick. It costs 3 XP. It can be used once before your next attack. However, after you resolve a melee attack, you choose a hostile figure adjacent to you and roll a green die. That figure suffers damage equal to the damage results. Now, on a green die, I believe you're highly likely to get 1, sometimes 2 damage. So that's kind of a free extra melee attack. It's weak, but it can make the difference. Next, we got Art of Movement. First, it adds an extra speed to the hero, makes her super mobile. Second, it allows her to ignore additional movement point costs when entering difficult terrain or spaces containing hostile figures. So if she's got Art of Movement, those blocking Imperial figures do not matter to her. She can still move through them at the same cost as moving through unimpeded spaces. Going into the 4 XP now. First, we have Way of the Sarlacc. She can spend an action and 2 strain. And for each hostile figure adjacent to her, she performs 1 attack with a melee weapon targeting that figure. A bit of an awkward wording there, but essentially she gets to target each hostile figure next to her with a melee attack for just 1 action and 2 strain. Her other 4 XP offering is Dancing Weapon. 1 action, 1 surge. She gets to perform a ranged attack using a melee weapon. It adds 1 blue die to the attack pool, which of course is going to add more potential surge, more potential damage, but it'll also add range to the weapon, since if you're going to be using it as a ranged weapon, you will need to get the range numbers to actually hit the target. It does also add a +2 accuracy and a +1 damage surge ability. So you know, that's fun. You're gonna lightsaber throw your enemies. Okay, her personal mission is Temptation. That's a fun one where she goes to where Darth Vader killed her master and fights a bunch of ghosts. On success, she gets Shu Yen's lightsaber. Blue-red attack weapon. It's got these crazy surge abilities, and when she uses Foresight, the attacker suffers 1 damage after the attack resolves. This is honestly a tier 3 weapon with the exception that it doesn't get 3 dice, but it does have those great surge abilities to make up for it. It also gets an attachment slot, so if you find an attachment that adds dice or just surges, then that'll pair with it very nicely. But essentially, you get this, you don't have to worry about a tier 3 weapon for Diala, and if you get it early in the game, it is absolutely broken. Most stormtroopers don't survive even one attack from that thing. Alright, moving into our 6th and final character for this video. We have one of the more advanced rebels here, Eshka'rey, bold renegade. He's kind of a rogue sniper type. He's only got 10 health and 1 white die for defense, but he's got good endurance and he's got above average stats, the cherry on top being a very good engineering ability. Looking at his abilities, he's got ambush. He can spend 1 strain, use when you declare an attack targeting a figure that does not have line of sight to you, and the attack gains Pierce 2. But wait, Ronnie, I hear you asking, how is he able to shoot a target that doesn't have line of sight to him? Since generally, if you see a target, they can see you too. Well, that's all in his covert ability. It's a passive ability. Hostile figures 4 or more spaces away from him do not have line of sight to him. He also does not block line of sight for those figures. So basically, if an Imperial figure is 4 or more spaces away from Mac, they just cannot see him. They do not have line of sight to him, and that means he can then use that ambush ability on them to do extra pierce. Pierce 2 is absolutely fantastic. It pretty much cancels out a black defense die. Unless they roll a 3 block on that, but then that's only 1 block. Moving to his weapon. He's got the long blaster. Great starting sniper rifle. +1 damage, +1 pierce surge abilities, and it rolls 2 blue dice, so that is actually a minimum of 4 accuracy. And it's most likely going to be more. So that's absolutely great for his ambush and covert abilities. If you want to get something more powerful, I recommend a weapon that's got at least 1 blue die. Or at the very least, if you find the upgrade that increases the accuracy by 2, it's like a barrel. Moving into his XP abilities. Hold on tight, these can get a little bit complicated. Disengage. You spend 1 strain and exhaust this card when a hostile figure enters a space within 3 spaces of you to gain 3 movement points. You'll essentially move that immediately. It's great for moving back or even forward if you want to. Supply network. This one's pretty neat. You exhaust this card during your activation to test perception, which is pretty good. If you pass, you get to reveal the top card of the supply deck and place it on the top or bottom of the deck. This allows you to see what supplies coming up, or even replace it with the next card. His next ability on that card, spend an action, deplete this card to draw 1 card from the supply deck. In case you're not sure what deplete means, it's sort of like exhaust, except you can use it once per game rather than once per turn. So it's just like a once per mission effect. They're generally really good. In this case, you get to draw a card from the supply deck. You don't have to be adjacent to a crate, which is where you normally get the supplies. Next up, He's got the Jeswandi training. Apply +2 health to the hero, bringing him up to Diala levels of health. And he can exhaust this card after a hostile figure within 3 spaces resolves an attack on him or anyone else, and then he becomes focused. That is, of course, once before the start of his next turn. Target acquired. You can spend 1 strain and exhaust this card before you declare an attack. During this attack, figures do not block your line of sight and apply +2 accuracy to the attack results. This is fantastic. For the cost of 1 strain, you can shoot, you can shoot past other Imperials to get at the target you really want. And with that +2 accuracy, you're highly likely to hit it. Moving into the 3 XP, you have Execute. After you resolve an attack, if the target figure was defeated, you recover 1 strain. And you can spend 1 surge to exhaust this card when you use Ambush. It removes all white dice from the target's defense pool. So, for example, that would be great for killing Imperial officers because they've only got 3 HP, and all they've got for their defense is a white die. That can be absolutely broken. And keep in mind that this first ability here is basically a passive, while this one is inactive. Even if an ability card like this is exhausted, you still get the passive ability. Always remember that for cards that do different things. Supply Network, though, you can't use its exhaust ability after it's been depleted. When a card's been depleted, you basically turn it upside down for the rest of the mission. You can't use it anymore until the next one. Next, we've got Expertise. You spend a strain, exhaust the card. During your activation, after you interact, you get to perform 1 additional action during this activation. So what this basically means is, for the cost of 1 strain, you get an interact for free. And that can be interacting with a terminal or door to perform a test or just open it. It can mean using a crate to get the 50 credits from it and also the item. So once Mac has Expertise, it's almost free to do that stuff, which can be absolutely huge because sometimes if you fail a test, you'll want another try. Sometimes you need to do a test, but you also need to fight enemies as well. That's kind of like a sneaky free third action in the right circumstances. Absolutely underrated in my opinion. Next, we've got the 4 XPs, starting with No Escape. Costs 2 strain. Exhaust this card after you resolve an attack. If the target figure was not defeated, you become focused, then perform 1 additional attack targeting the same figure. So yeah, if your target lives and you really don't want him to, you can spend 2 strain, focus, then shoot him again. Great for finishing things. Next you have Decoy. This is a deplete, so only once per game. However, you can deplete it when an attack targeting you is declared and the attack automatically misses. So it's like a free automatic total evade. And then after that, you're allowed to interrupt to place your figure in any empty space within 3 spaces, and then you become focused and may perform an attack. So that one's like a crazy final form ability, but you only get it once per mission. His personal mission is Loose Cannon. Haven't played it. It sounds fun though from the description. and it gives you the Shadow Suit reward if you're successful. The Shadow Suit does take up your armor slot. It's light armor. However, it does give you an automatic surge cancel, making it possibly the best light armor in the game. And you can use ambush while attacking figures who have line of sight to you. So you can use the one strain Pierce 2 ability even when they're within 3 of you. So that kind of removes that restriction. Yep, he's a very interesting character. Great for the sniping, great for messing with the supply decks and the action economy. If you can wrap your head around him, he's really good. Um, but yeah, that'll be all 6 of the characters in the core set. The ones that you'll have if you've got only the core set, and the ones I recommend if you're starting your Imperial Assault campaign journey. The 4 basic characters and the ones that it gives you in the tutorial are going to be Fenn, Jin, Gaarkhan, and Diala. But if you've got a good grasp of the game and want to explore the other 2, that's easy for me to recommend. They do some interesting things that the more quote-unquote vanilla basic choices don't necessarily. And you can mess with the Imperial and give yourself a leg up pretty easily with both Gideon and Mac. But I also recommend using characters you think you can wrap your head around, characters you like, whether just for the character itself or what it can do. Look carefully, decide for yourself, because ultimately having fun is what matters, and it's going to be a long campaign, especially if you don't really like the characters you picked. So it bears some thinking. Yep, that'll be it for this video then. Like, subscribe. I'm going to be tackling the Imperial figures that come in the core set before moving on to the campaign missions. Yep, I hope you learned a lot, or at least enough to get your own idea of what characters you'd like to play, or how to deal with them as the Imperial even. But yeah, thanks for watching. I will see you next time. Have a nice day.